ongoing partnership between the Dubai Film Festival, Art Dubai, and the Sharjah Art Foundation that explores the intersection between art and film. We'll be showing a screening of Monir, which is about an hour, and then we'll be moving on to a panel discussion with Leyla, Fakhr, the film's producer, Rahbar of the Third Line Gallery, and moderating the session will be Butheina Kazim from Cinema Akil. So I hope you'll stick around for that after. Thanks.
Really a huge thanks to everyone at DIF, and in particular a huge thanks to everyone at Moving Images for making this happen. Yeah, this is the first time we're screening in Dubai, and we are extremely excited. I'd like to say first and foremost that we're really missing Bahman Kiarostami here, the director of the film, who really deserves all the credits to the film. And yeah, just a huge thank you to him.
Yeah. What is he doing? Why is he not here?
Busy with various projects.
We're going to have to work on that, Sunny.
Yes. We're going to bring him out here soon.
So, Sunny, you've been working with Monir for, we're talking about almost 10 years now?
Yes.
And you've been telling her stories through, several exhibitions. She was one of the first artists you brought out here, since you started the Third Line Gallery. And you even published a book, the Cosmic Geometry. And you've been telling her story through all these different exhibitions and platforms. How does it feel to finally see it come together live and tell the whole sort of trajectory of Monir's work and her life?
Well, I actually think this is, the whole time when I was watching the film, I was thinking about everyone else who's seeing it for the first time and thinking how great it is that finally everyone can hear her story. Am I working? Yeah. So the whole time I was thinking, I hear her story. I'm so lucky, I think, that I have been able to spend so much time with her in the past, and I've gotten to know her and heard those stories firsthand. And for everyone to be able to see this now is incredible, because it's very hard to sort of, one by one, by the people I meet, to sort of go around and say what she's about. This is it's universal. Anyone can watch this. Thank you to Leyla and Bahman for Leyla for producing it, and Bahman for making it. But now finally anyone, anywhere can actually pick up this film and know more about her life, her practice, who she is as a person. I think it's a brilliant portrait of her. It's actually very accurate. And yeah, I think these things, books, films, are very important. And I'm happy that we were all able to be here, and hopefully more people will see her or know her story.
So why is this such an important story to know? Leyla, you're a curator, and this is your second film. And you made a short film. You produced a short film before, yes. And this is your first feature film that you've produced. Why did you decide to kind of take the leap of faith and make this film? Why did it mean so much to you?
Well, I had the idea while I was working at Tate. I was an assistant curator, and I was researching about her work. I'd known about her work, but I started to sort of really get into her story as a person as well. And I just became completely absorbed in her life story. I also found that what I would see in exhibitions and what was portrayed in the art world was really only one aspect of her. And there are so many different aspects about herself, but also about her work, that I felt like weren't really covered. I found that, in particular, when she was sort of seen and interpreted in the Western sort of art scenes, she was sort of more portrayed as the artist who's known Andy Warhol and who's known Frank Stella, etc. And that she works.
You see that a lot, right? In the
that's
film,
right. Yes, and that is an important aspect of her, and that her work is about geometric forms. But there is also her drawings, and there's also her Heartache series, and there's also, for example, the works of the bees is a very important part of her practice that I felt just wasn't really covered before. So I really had this, I really felt that as a curator, I didn't want to do an exhibition about it, but I really felt an urge to record her life story and her work in the moving image, really just to save it in art history. I was just really taken by it. Yeah.
But in a way, this is not an exhibition film, right? You do touch on the works, and you do showcase sort of the range of, especially with the archival footage of the bees sort of series. But you're really trying to dig deep into understanding or creating an understanding of Monir as a person, but also as a woman in a way. This is a film that you can't really watch without sort of looking at the struggle that she had as a character, as a woman, as a wife, as a mother, as this object that she touches on as well. How did that play out for you?
Absolutely. I mean, that was it's been a really personal film for me because I was 9 months pregnant when I had the idea. And as I said, I really had this urge for my kids to see that this incredible woman at the age of 93 was a mother, was a wife, was a host, but also really very much stayed true to being an artist and working even now at the age of 93. So that was really an important aspect of it. To highlight on her strength as a woman.
Sunny, was that something that was part of the impetus of working on the book as well?
As a woman, or I'm not working again.
Her personal story. I mean,
the book I think was more about her work and also making. I mean, I think like you said, I mean, she's been seen as so many different things, but not just only as an artist. So it's hard to sort of separate Monir, the woman, from Monir, the work. And I think the book was much more about the work, and I think that was very important at the time. You know, there is another book about her life, is sort of the memoirs of Monir. But so I think, you know, the book, definitely was more about the work and sort of establishing her as an artist and, you know, amongst other artists of her generation. So for me, the book and the film sort of brings it all together.
Yeah, absolutely.
You really needed both, though. I mean,
Absolutely.
You needed to start with that. People understand her work and then bring.
Yeah. No, and like what Leyla said, I think it's so important that these memories remain. And I think in a 20 or 100 years from now, that someone can pick up this book and maybe have never known about Monir will now know about her works, or can pick up the film and will see this beautiful story about this woman and all that she's done in her life. So I think this is what we were discussing before.
Did it really help having these references when you started the research process, the cosmic geometry and the Mirror Garden books?
That's a really interesting point. That's another reason why I made the film. Because I found that a lot of information that I was researching generally about artists from the region, and this is sort of, 10 years ago, 7-8 years ago, when I really started looking into it, there was relatively very little written at the time. Now it's just increasing day by day. But I also found what was written, I didn't find necessarily it wasn't actually accurate. I sort of would read one thing and then I talked to the artist and it wasn't actually the truth.
Like what? Like what would be the?
So for example, good reference is Monir's. So how there was. In the very beginning, Monir's work was very much read in relation to Sufism and that. But actually, that is not really the main part of her work. Her work is actually very much of a meditative act. And that's, again, another reason why we did the film, because we wanted to show that this is not the past. This is a woman who's still working, who's still using the medium, her work, it's a meditative act for her. She has to do it. It's what's keeping her alive. And there isn't actually a whole lot of theory around it. It's just she's just doing it. She's just like Agnes Martin. She's just really enjoying the meditative act of working as an artist. So that was the other reason. So I felt like what was written about these artists, obviously not the book that came out that Sunny produced, but I'm talking about previously, was just not enough. And I really wanted to dig deeper.
So walk me through the sort of the thinking behind kind of approaching Bahman Kiarostami, the whole process of making this film, the production side of it. When did you decide to do it, and how did you go about kind of the fundraising and all the aspects?
So I had the idea in 2012. So the production took over 2.5 years. And I just, as I said, I was researching about the work. I became really absorbed, and I had really this idea of making this film, and I wasn't really sure how I'm going to do it, but I knew Bahman because I had worked with him before. I had made a short film with him before, and I really liked the way we worked together. So he was
as a director?
As a director. So he was an obvious candidate. However, with the other film, I had... yeah, we worked very well together in the way that he was very happy with feedback, and we just sort of had a very good relationship. So I knew that I could work very well with him. So I approached him, and I called Monir, and we approached her, and she said, "I'm absolutely not interested in working with you two." So
well, she seems
Bahman
really,
called me.
open to a lot of different things.
Oh, she was very straight on. I think she actually kicked him out of her apartment, and he called me and he said, "This is not going to roll. I'm sorry, you got to find someone else." And this was really just the beginning of, this was in the end. This was the beginning, and there were many hiccups like that. She's a very strong-minded woman, again, which makes her so inspiring. But it was, it just continuous. It was just sort of continuously working with her slowly, day by day, and just taking every step out of it. And I didn't actually get an image release from her until one day before the Guggenheim opening. So I was completely I was just risking it because I knew it will be great, and I knew that she would be happy with it because I had full faith in Bahman. And I knew she's incredible, so I just knew it was going to work. But basically, after I approached him, going back to the fundraising, I then started the fundraising, and I got a little bit of I got some funds from the Iran Heritage Foundation to start with, to make a trailer, and then slowly I received a bit more funding, and I commissioned Bahman. That's how I worked on this.
And you see that part where she's kind of she's toying with the policeman outside the house. After a very kind of heart-wrenching, scene, she kind of regains her strength back, and she's poking fun at these policemen that are standing outside. Was it hard to kind of negotiate with the authorities, the shooting process, the Tehran bit at least?
No, it wasn't, because as you see, most of it was actually shot indoors in her studio. So the majority of the film is actually is only shot in her studio, or we're shooting outside of Tehran. That particular scene was it wasn't so tricky. It was very short, but it really again gives a really good indication of what she's like. She gets emotional, but then she moves on. It's done.
Was she very involved in the process of
Very.
The production process, the screening,
Well, she wanted to be informed, and she did give out a lot of sort of ideas of how we should take it and what we should do. And we tried to keep her involved as much as we could. But then, in the end, Bahman is an artist and director in his own right, and he really had to have the full final word, as did I. So we tried to work with her as much as possible. For example, we included a critic called Suren Melikian, of whom I didn't know, but he was suggested by Monir. So there are little suggestions that have come in from her, and they have worked really well. So we did try to work all three very closely together.
I mean, that Philip Glass kind of soundtrack to the rotating fountain was a really good, intervention. Sunny, has that always been your experience working with Monir? Kind of constantly having to negotiate kind of the process of creation and display? And
I mean, she's extremely strong-minded is a good word. She knows exactly what she wants. She's usually always right, actually, so I don't argue with her. But I remember also when she's she has this vision, and she sees things as they are finished, which is something I think is quite incredible. I mean, she says in the film that she dreams of all these projects, and she really does. I mean, she always says, it's crazy. I have so much work that I still have to make, and I don't have enough time to finish all the work. But I think that will always be the case, even if she lived to be 500. I think she's just one of these people that just always has to create, and this is how she's been probably since day one. But yeah, she's definitely strong-minded. She definitely knows what she wants. But I think she's also quite guarded. I think because she's been through so much in her life and faced so many obstacles that I think she's always a little bit, she takes a distance from things or doesn't trust so easily. And I think that's probably what happened also when they first met. And I remember that time as well, because Leyla and I spoke about Monir not wanting to do this film. And I thought, but okay, so we tried to help the negotiation process. And I think finally she let, Bahman in, and then this film happened. So that's
And
very
now,
much
and now
her.
they're best friends.
Now they're best friends. I mean, now every time I go to Tehran, Bahman is coming for dinner, and we're going for dinner with Bahman, and so it all worked out.
You were saying something about the idea of kind of Monir. Yes, she did have, the and we'll get back to the idea of those kind of challenges that she had to face and the way that she dealt with them. But from the get-go, you said she's always been this way. She's always had this foresight, and she's always had kind of the opportunity and the realm to think big and to dream and to see herself in these lights. What was the kind of foundation of that? How do you explain her
Well, I think
ability
she's
to
a
do this?
very solid character, and just to add to what Sunny was saying, what absolutely blew me away working with Monir is that even at this age of 93, she remembers absolutely everything, every conversation we have, every person she's ever encountered in her life, every book, every artist she's met is absolutely mind-boggling. Bahman and she will talk about a film, and she'll say, "Who made that?" And Bahman and I will struggle finding the name, and she's the one who remembers. I mean, her memory is laser sharp. It's really incredible. In terms of her background, she's a very, very solid character, an incredibly strong woman, and I really believe it has a lot to do with her childhood, which we haven't covered in the film just because we couldn't. We could only cover so much. But her father was one of the first people who opened a girls' school in Qazvin. So she was always, from the very beginning, encouraged to think independently. And if you think about her, at the age of only, 21, she decided that she wants to leave Tehran and she wants to study in France. And she didn't tell her parents about it. She just had the idea. And she went to get the visa. The visa was denied. So, she couldn't get the visa because it was at the end of World War II. So she had to go to America. And even if you just think at that point how focused she was to get away, and it wasn't easy going there at that point. She had to take a train all the way to the south of Iran, then take a boat to India, and take another ship from India all the way to arrive at the west coast, and then made herself over to New York. So she was always very driven at that young age. I think it just shows a lot about how much she really wanted to pursue a career as an artist.
Then why is it that you felt
And her father allowed it. I mean, again, that's an interesting...
So how do you explain the overwhelming amount of literature that you had to kind of break down, that existed about Monir's work, and kind of the focus on her, being this, this tremendous party giver, as one of the interviewees was saying, the hostess, the collector, all of these aspects of her of the different roles that she played. Why was that such a dominant aspect of the material that was written about her and the literature that existed?
Well, I think it is part of her. You can't sort of separate it from her, as Sunny was saying. So,
but do you think it was a specific kind of perspective or gaze that was at play in kind of covering the idea?
Perhaps that was setting her apart from the stereotype of an Iranian woman or an Iranian artist. I think that's definitely part of it. So she didn't fit the stereotype, and there was an element of surprise, and perhaps that would gain more attention.
One of my favorite lines in the film is when she says, she's doing that interview, and she says, we had all these, she's talking about the confiscation of the pieces, the Andy Warhol assigned piece, all these different, this amazing collection. And she says, we had these things, and now we don't. And that seems to me that that's the foundational element of all her work. How do you see it play out in her art and working with her?
That's very much Monir's story. I mean, everything that her career has had so many interruptions. Her life has had so many interruptions. She's been so courageous. I mean, to go back to Iran, it was in 2000. It was in 2000, just like 2002. She went back, and she was already at this point. She was 80 something. Yeah. So even that, and moving into an apartment by herself without her daughters, both live in the US, and her grandchildren too, and everything. So she was very much alone. So I think, every time I sit with her, this is what she always says, is that, you know, it doesn't matter what we had before, it's what we have now, and this is how we live now. And she always sort of apologizes for her apartment or like not having like enough. But in this sort of, you know, she remembers what she had, but she doesn't, you know, it's not like this nostalgia for the past. It's just always looking forward. And I think that's probably why she's also been such a great sort of visionary, in the sense that she's not, you know, letting anything that has happened hold her back. I know that's how I see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Although she does work with a form or a medium that is very much about the past, but she kind of brings it to the
yeah, I mean, she's pushing
to the
that medium
contemporary
as well, and I mean, exactly, and it's very contemporary what she does, and it's taking an old Persian handicraft that's rooted in, you know, centuries ago, but bringing it very much into our, you know, current, you know, where we are now. So I think, yeah, I mean, I guess there is a nostalgia there. You're right.
I'm not sure if it's nostalgia necessarily. I think, yeah, perhaps to some degree, but I think it's also that her work is just really rooted in those foundations. And at the time when Monir was doing mirror works, actually, nobody was really interested in mirror works anymore in Tehran. It was a dying out medium. So she really revived it and sort of innovated a new artistic language, which is, I think, why a lot of people were drawn to her to start with, because it just stood out. The medium of it stood out.
But what was the decision? I mean, this was primarily, you know, she drove the narrative, right? So Monir was the prime kind of character in this. But you had access, I mean, you had access to her daughters, you had access to a lot of, even the artisans working with her and the craftsmen. What was the decision to not interview them? Was it difficult?
It was really difficult. It was very difficult because there is, you know, she's such a big persona, and there's so many angles you could take. But we tried to make it, I mean, for me, the most important thing about her was just how involved she is in her work, and how much her world in her studio is a very specific world that I wanted to capture. So I didn't really want to get into the story of her relationship with her daughters, again, which is a sort of whole other world. I didn't really want to get into a relationship with her workers. I really wanted it to make about her as a woman and being an artist, and what her journey has been. Now, there are personal aspects that are attached to it, but it's not about that.
What was it like working with Bahman? Did you see eye to eye with this aspect?
Yeah, we did actually. On this, we agreed. But I think, like any project that takes on more than a year. I mean, we worked on this 2.5 years. There are bound to be hiccups, and so I think there were sort of sometimes disagreements, but overall, I think we always sort of met in the middle.
I mean, since this is a forum to talk about kind of the general notion of the life that art has in film and vice versa, I wanted to get your take on. We were talking about all the documentaries, and specifically this year, I think, you know, the focus is on portraying artists in film and how they've been tackled. You know, and you have films like Mitra Farahani's Fifi Howls from Happiness. You know, you've had a few at the gallery. You've had a few artists making films and films about their characters. How do you define the relationship between the two worlds? Maybe Sunny, I'll start with you.
Sorry, define the relationship
between art and film. Is there?
Well, I mean, a film about an artist versus an artist making a film. I think many artists from I mean, whatever medium they work with, I think film has always been fascinating because it's something that is not static, it's moving, it's, you know, it's something that I think most artists at some stage, if they don't explore it, would like to explore it. The artists that we work with, that work with film, Yusuf Nabil is one of them. He's just made his second short film, but he's a photographer first and foremost, and then he made a film, but he is fascinated with cinema. And I mean, I think after a while, this is the only way that his images now move, and there's a story.
And do you actually encourage that as a gallery? How do you assess sort of, you know, if when you work with artists that want to explore the film as a medium? Yeah.
I don't really get involved in their decisions. I mean, you know, I tell them what I think, and you know, if they want to make a film, they can make a film. I do think sometimes it fails, but I try to sort of keep that to myself. Everything is part of figuring out the next thing, right? So it's fine. Like if it doesn't work, then the next thing will come out of that failure as well. So, but I think most of the artists that I work with who've explored film have done it well, and they've achieved what they wanted to out of it. I think it's an interesting time that we live in now that actually, I mean, we're discussing this film. I think this is an artist's film as well. I mean, Bahman has painted a portrait of Monir in a very beautiful way. I mean, I've known Monir now for almost 10 years, and he is an artist, exactly. So, you know, I think that it's interesting. There's all these blurred boundaries that you can't really tell what I think, and so I think, you know, when I watched this, I thought, wow, like how could he have figured out what Monir is and put it in so beautifully in this film? It's incredible because he's only known her for a few years. So, you know, I think that in itself is art. So, yeah, so.
Yeah, I mean, Leyla?
The question was
the relationship between film and art, and specifically making a biography documentary. Why is that important, and why was it so hard for you to actually make this? I mean, in terms of getting the support, because you got involved, right, the Third Line Gallery in making this film. And you tried to get support for making films like this. And
well, this is a different question, and it's an interesting question. I really struggled getting the funding together for the film, and we were talking about this earlier, that it's just generally a little bit difficult for films and books to get appropriate funding. There are not really also there are not a whole lot of funding bodies for both of those either. So that's a separate question, but
the general relationship between film and art, and how do you see it as both a curator, but now from a producer's point of view?
I think they're completely intertwined into each other. I don't think you can separate them from each other. So I think there is definitely part of each other. And
you've been involved in
both,
right? You've been involved.
I have been involved in both, yes. But my choice of working with Bahman is because he's an artist. So I wouldn't probably work with somebody who solely makes BBC documentaries. That wouldn't be the right fit for this particular film. I really wanted the film to stand up for itself, because Monir is already quite an overpowering artist. So I really wanted the documentary filmmaker, one, to be from a different generation, completely different generation, and secondly, really stand up for itself and have its own language. And I think it does. I think it does have a very particular language. You can see Bahman you can feel him throughout the whole film. In a very subtle way. Well,
but
not so subtle.
That's really interesting to me. I mean, not so subtle, maybe. But it's interesting because you said you wouldn't work with a director that does not have a background in arts or is not an artist. Do you see directors as sort of not involved in the arts world, whereas artists can be? Oh
no, absolutely not. No, I just think it depends on, and sometimes they have to make a film for it doesn't mean that just because you make one you don't do the other. Sometimes you need to make a film for a TV, and sometimes you have the liberty. I mean, that was the thing with this particular film. I really didn't want to approach a network or anything, because I wanted him to have full artistic freedom, because that's the way I work. That's the way I'm used to working with artists generally, to just give them artistic freedom, and then I come in and I sort of decide on certain sections and how we go next in terms of for example, who we interviewed for the film and all that. But generally, I think.
So how was the experience of producing different than curating, or was there tensions and similarities that you noticed going through the process of making a feature?
I actually don't think it was too different. I think the result is very different, but I think the process was probably not too different from the way I usually work. The only thing that was very different was that it took a long time. It took over 2.5 years. But the process of it was me being in constant relationship and discussion with Bahman, Monir, but also our musician. We had a really wonderful composer who worked with us, And then the Kronos Quartet recorded this in San Francisco, and they were fantastic because they were so taken by Monir that they decided to record their music in the only women's studio in the world that's built by women. So there are all these sort of little subtleties that came together that I would have I guess that's why I'm saying I don't think it would have been different to a curatorial project. I think the result is different and the length of it probably. But we collaborated all very closely, and I don't think I was a sort of traditional producer in terms of,
I guess that's what makes this film so unique, and even in this forum, particularly. But the films that we talked about, I mean, the Bahman Muhassas film, the film that Bahman Kiarostami worked on, the graphic designer Momayez film, the godfather of Iranian graphic design, the first film that Bahman Kiarostami made. I mean, these are all kind of legacy characters, right? People who have had a body of work, experience, and a voice that's existed for a long time. So, who do you think actually, from an artist's point of view as well, deserves the glory of film? I mean, is that something that's a prerequisite, or anybody could?
No. What do you think,
profiled?
Sunny? I don't think you deserve a glory. I mean, I think it's about the character, isn't it? I mean,
I think it's about the character that you choose and the story that they have to tell. So I think that, I mean, do you mean if it was a younger artist that didn't have such a, I suppose you'd need, enough to be able to make it. But if the character is rich enough, then I think that you would have enough to go with. But I mean, is that what the question was?
Yes.
I didn't really make the film. I didn't really make the film on Monir because she was well known. I was simply taken by her character.
So if this was 5 years ago and it was easy as it is to make, then
absolutely, yes. I mean, I think that's like any art project. If you believe that you have something interesting to say, then you do it. Whether they are well known or not is not really a factor at that point.
So, Sunny, if you had to make an artist film, who would be your artist?
Oh, God, this is a hard question. If I would have to make an artist film now, what from?
No pressure.
From the artist, from one of the artists that the third line represents.
Possibly.
Just narrow it down.
I would assume there's
I
a
hope
bias
nobody's
there.
in here that works with us. Actually, I think that I would like to make if I could choose, I would like to make a film about Hassan Hajjaj and his story, because I think that would be an interesting story through Marrakesh, London, music, fashion, art. I mean, I think that would be a nice story to tell. But I mean, if I think about it, there's so many. But yeah.
Leyla, do you have any projects under your belt at the moment?
No film projects right now. No, I'm just.
So possibly a Hassan Hajjaj documentary.
No, that's not
on the horizon.
No, I wish. No, I don't think so. No.
I mean, we are at a film festival. I'm sure we have a few distributors and people who would buy off script. So talk to us after. I'm going to close off sort of our bit before we open up to the audience and ask and get your questions by asking what's next for the third line, what's next for Monir specifically, and Leyla, what's next for the film? What are you going to do with it? Or how are you going to distribute it? How is this going to circulate?
So we have we have a couple of distributors interested. So now it's just a matter of deciding who we go with. And I suppose when I made the film, I was coming from a curatorial background. I always thought, well, this is going to be a great film. We're going to sort of broaden understanding about Monir's work in various museums and institutions. And we are having more screenings in various sort of upcoming at the MFA in Houston and Boston and the National Gallery and so on. So I think those will be continuous. So that's for us in terms of the film.
Is it important to you to show the film, to continue to show the film in the region? And
yes,
how is it different? To
very
show it
important,
here?
Yes. I think it should be shown everywhere, but very important in the region as well. I think people understand her work. They've probably seen more of her work here than they have, for example, in London, because she hasn't had a really big exhibition of her work. She's still relatively unknown in London, really.
But in New York, I mean, she's had that
Yes,
big Guggenheim
in New York.
show.
Yes,
recently,
absolutely. Mhm.
All right, and Sunny, what's next from Monir?
So we actually are showing Monir at the third line, January. So that will be the next time you all, if you're living in Dubai, will have the opportunity to see her work. So please come by.
Yeah, the Third Line Gallery is at
The third line in Alcos, the
Alcos,
new space in Al Serkal.
So we hope to see you there. And I'm going to open up to the audience. Does anybody have any questions, comments, thoughts? Right up there.
I just want to know what Monir thinks when she sees this film. Has she seen it, and are you guys still friends?
We are still friends indeed, because she likes the film. Yes, she saw the film for the first time in Portugal after she had a big retrospective there, and she really did like it, and she was very happy with it. So we are, and so was her family. So we were all. It was a happy ending.
Right up here, Antonia.
Thank you, and thank you for letting us show this as part of Moving Images. It's really great. I just wanted to ask you a little bit more about the role of museums and institutions in distributing films like this. And it's a conversation that we began last year when we had a conversation with Joanna Haji Thomas, and she was talking about distributing on her with her filmmaker and a bit of her artist hat on. With Akil about the ways their films have shown in museums like MoMA and attracted kind of queues around the block, and how those kinds of museums are starting to act as cinemas for films like this, as it's obviously very hard to get a general distribution even in art house cinemas for something like this. And obviously it was fantastic to see the film on the big screen, and this is something we talked about a lot with our colleagues at Sharjah Art Foundation and Dubai Film Festival, about wanting to show it in a very new, crisp cinema like this, rather than opt to show it in a room on a smaller screen with it, so it's obviously a real treat. But presumably from here on there's going to be more distribution on smaller screens, more ad hoc situations than there are in commercial cinemas. So I wondered if you could just talk a little bit about that. And Bahman's obviously made a film that's really cinematic, so how will that translate into these different circumstances?
Well, so far we've been really lucky. We've had a lot of cinema screenings, so that has been very lucky. The Guggenheim, we had a really nice first screening. The Sunny was there, but then it was shown in a quite small cinema. So that wasn't. I didn't find that ideal, but I did find it quite important because I do think it works very well in conjunction with her exhibition. So I think we're quite lucky because I think the film can do both. And I'm not just saying that. I really do think it works both ways. What the responsibilities of museums and institutions is, I think it's great that they're doing more. I think it's quite good that they're doing more screenings like that because people know where to go for it. Because as you said, it's a matter of knowing that this film is out there. And if people know about Monir, they will follow up and come and see it. But if they don't know about it and they'll just see it in a listing, then they may, it's just sort of out of context, isn't it? So I think it would be great if museums would do a lot more, actually. For example, I had a really easy time screening at the ICA in London, but the Tate wasn't so forthcoming. And I thought that was kind of ironic. So, it depends, I think.
Wa'al right here.
It's okay, I took wrong. Thank you for making a non-super emotional, sappy film, but an actual, properly done documentary. My question is actually quite opposite to Antonia's. Have you sent this to a lot of film festivals, and whether accepted or rejected, how was the reaction to this type of storyline?
Yeah. We have sent it to not that many festivals, actually. It looks like we're going to get accepted in 1 or 2 now coming up. But for example, we were rejected from the Berlin Film Festival. I was quite surprised. So I don't know really what makes it acceptable in one or the other. I really don't know. But then we've been getting really good responses recently. I think a lot of it has to do with people knowing who Monir is. it seems like, and then sort of understanding what the film does for her. It seems that sort of works with each other.
Which is ironic, because after seeing this, you'd probably understand more.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I think it's probably, I wonder, you know, being sort of sometimes a judge on things, I think it's just the amount of material you get. So if you get a film on an artist that you don't really know much about, and I don't know, maybe that has something to do with it, but this is really just an honest answer.
Hi, thank you for showing this movie here. It was great. I really, really liked it. My question is also regarding the distribution, because you know, we talk about film festivals outside of Iran, and we talk about distribution platforms such as Netflix, which I think that would be great on. Yes. But my question is, do you have any plans on showing it in Iran? And I know it's, you know, she's not wearing the hijab in all the scenes and all of that. So understandably, I could understand that it's difficult, but for me, it's like the Iranian youth would be very interested in this as a primary market. And a lot of times, Netflix, iTunes, available to them. Yeah. So what are your plans regarding that?
Yeah, we actually talked about this with Bahman. So we had a couple of small screenings, but quite intimate, with sort of on invitation only. But we were talking about the hijab is actually not so much of a problem, but we thought what would be a problem is sort of how at the moment the film is sort of more in English language. I know that there's translation, but it's sort of mostly centered around the English language. So we would have to change the format a little bit to make it more about the Farsi language. So we have been thinking about making a version for Iran, okay, and showing it there in the mainstream. But it has been shown a few times, but as I said, in quite small screenings.
Just regarding the language thing, just if you're interested, I read that the Fakhr Film Festival in Iran, they're increasing their, like basically the movies that they're showing by 20% of more international language films. Yes. So that might be kind of interesting.
Absolutely. No, I actually don't mean so much in terms of translation. I mean just the way to structure it more so.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Oh, and thank you to the Sharjah Art Foundation, to the Dubai Film Festival, to Art Dubai for their insistence on creating a conversation throughout the festival as we get overwhelmed by all the other aspects that, you know, that happen at this event to do this. So thank you. Thank you all for coming.